This
so that you
conference will
have
now be recorded.
an idea how this drives through. So the intent is to cover until big data integration. And for big data integration is a subset of it. So we'll be starting at the data integration concepts, right from the fundamentals, as in how do we build a basic job from reading from any external data source, writing into external data source. And while we do this, we also explore working with different types of external sources like files, relational objects, etc. And throughout this process, we'll also see if at all you have to work with web services, how do we do that and so on. So that's on the endpoints. How do we read data, write data, and all that. And then in between read and write, how do we perform data integrations is what we'll be exploring. As in, after reading the data, maybe you'd like to filter some data, maybe you'd like to integrate a couple of data sources by joining them, maybe you'd like to summarize the data by aggregating the information, right? Maybe you'd like to reorder the data by sorting, maybe you'd like to pivot the data by normalizing and denormalizing. So all these sorts of data transformation techniques we'll be learning uh, after reading, before writing, and so on. And after that, once after we learn about the primary extraction, transmission, loading aspects, and then we go into the advanced level where we talk about reusability concepts, we talk about parameterization concepts, we also talk about parallelization, serialization concepts, and so on, right? And we also see error mechanism, right? How do we capture the errors? How do we catch the errors, and so on? And how do we log the errors, logging mechanism? So we'll be seeing all those details. And then we'll be talking about incremental loading. That is, in a typical ETL architecture, the purpose of ETL jobs is to run on periodical basis. That means if you schedule a job that is running on daily basis and you're reading the data from the same transactional input table or a source, you need to ensure you do not reprocess the same amount of data. The job should be intelligent enough to identify that new data that has been added to your input and then process only that to the target. So this concept is called incremental loading. We'll be also learning how to do that, how do we design jobs to capture the data on your incremental basis and all. So once we are done with that, once we are done with all those standard data integration concepts, when I say standard, which are applicable on any type of data sources, right? It doesn't matter whether you're reading from a relational data source, whether you're reading from a file data source, or even whether you're reading from a big data source, right? So these concepts are generic. Once we learn about these generic concepts, both in advanced and basic level, then we go to the big data integration part, where we learn about exclusively integration of your big data systems. As in, if you are working with Hadoop files, HDFS files, how do we read, write, process? Otherwise, if you are to work with uh, relational objects or structured data objects within your Hadoop, that is Hive, how do we read, write, and process some complex Hive queries within your talent jobs? How do we do that? We'll also be exploring that part. And then we'll talk about something called batch-based processing and stream-based processing. How do we do that batch-based processing in something called MapReduce? And we also talk about something called Spark framework. In Spark framework, we also learn about how do we do batch processing and stream processing, right? So briefly, stream is nothing but the real-time data processing. Batch is the conventional uh, data processing technique that we follow, right? So This is how we're going to take the training forward. We'll pick up slow, we pick up at the fundamentals, and then we take it up eventually into the advanced levels, and then ultimately reach the big data integration part. So this will go on about next 3 to 4 weeks. We'll be connecting 5 hours a week, 5 days a week, and throughout the training, majorly it will be the learning or the teaching hours, and I'll be demonstrating everything whenever I talk about a topic. And the practicals or your hands-on is expected that you do it on your personal time and then come back with your queries on the next session. We'll clear those queries and then continue the next day topics, right? So that's how it's gonna be.
So
First, let's.
do you have any labs that you will be giving us, to
Yeah.
go? Okay.
Okay. So whatever the exercises I'll be doing throughout these sessions, you can replicate them by referring to the recorded session. In addition to that, I'll also be giving some case studies or exercises which you can try out additionally, along with the one that we do in the sessions. So yeah, so that's the plan. Now let's get started. First, let's briefly understand about Talend as a tool, and then take it up about architecture in detail. So Talend is a data processing firm wherein it deals with a wide variety of tools or a product, a suite wherein you have a bunch of tools or products within your suite, each one meant for different type of data operation or different type of data processing. For example, in a typical data movement life cycle, an organization may implement different levels of your data processing techniques. Wherein, let's say you have a legacy data storage system. Maybe what you want to do is first you apply some data quality on top of it by standardizing the data or making it truth identifiable data. And then you may want to apply ETL processing on top of it. And then you may want to load into your one uh, uh, master copy of your data by using master data management in place by applying your um, uh, match and merge techniques, right? Consolidation techniques and all that. And then ultimately the data may go into a BI system or reporting tool. Now, on top of this entire data flow, you may want to add a metadata monitoring tool also that helps us track how a particular column is being transformed throughout all these systems in your environment. So you may need to have a metadata tool also. And like an ETL system that you have in place that's meant for batch processing, you may also need to have some data services hosting, right? That means maybe you'd like to have a APIs published on top of your systems, or you may want to use them for app integrations. So how do we create these web services from scratch? Yes, there is a tool again for that particular purpose. So in a data lifecycle management, you may need to use different tools to process or to process your data for different purposes. So a full-scale data processing organization typically provides all those different tools. Earlier to Talend, there are enterprise tools like Informatica or IBM or Oracle, right? And Microsoft to some extent, not full scale though. So these all organizations has their full scale product suite that offers different products to different data processing techniques, right? So Talend also has joined to this level of capabilities wherein Talend has come up with their own product suite, which they would like to call it as unified platform, right? So across all these tools, you'll be able to connect to these wide variety of data systems, be it reading purposes, be it writing purposes. You may want to read from a relational data source like a MySQL or Oracle or SQL Server, Teradata, etc. Or maybe application sources like Salesforce, SAP, etc. Or maybe from your cloud systems like AWS, GCS, Azure, etc. Or typical file objects and so on, right? So that's briefly about Talend as a firm, Talend as a data processing firm, and what it has to offer for your different data needs. Now, briefly talking about what makes Talend special, or why people are flocking onto using Talend off late, especially over last 3 to 4 years, compared to the enterprise leaders that we mentioned here. So there are a couple of aspects that puts Talend on the pedestal compared to the other ones. One, the pricing model. Second, the big data integration capabilities or the tools that are already there in the market, right? And another one is this will go into pricing model itself, but uh, uh, the community edition availability, right? So pricing model, the typical pricing model, all these enterprise players follow is they majorly charge you based on the power of your server engines that you'd like to host, as in how much memory that you'd like to have, how many cores that you'd like to have, how many processors that you'd like to have, right? And so on. There is a consideration of what is the maximum number of users that are allowed to create user profiles within your server. But then again, this limit would be minimum starting with about 20 users, 25 users, and so on. So this is not really designed for small scale organizations or mid range organizations wherein you don't really see the teams that large. Teams should be about 3 members, 4 members, or even max to max 5, 6 members who will be carrying out end-to-end activities. So how do we give a best pricing model for to have it more feasible for these kind of small scale or mid range organizations is by giving equal importance to the number of users that are accessing your environment along with the power of server engines that you'd like to build, right? So that's where the pricing model is that pays or that gives equal importance to the number of users plus the power of server engines. Next up, coming to big data integration capabilities. Java Talend being built on Java and big data programming that is mapped uses Java based, wherein you will be using the libraries based on Java and the compilation, the runtime environment, everything is on Java. The code that is generated through Talend jobs is more user friendly and more easy to debug and break it down for the performance related aspects. compare to the MapReduce or code or MapReduce integration with respect to other enterprise players available in the market. And even before that, Talent was the first people that introduced this big data integration. What do I mean by that is an ETL tool that has the capability to directly connect to your big data system, to read from a Hadoop file or to read from a Hive table and so on, or write and so on. Earlier, these all tools do not have those capabilities. If at all we wanted to do a big data integration, people used to do that through external programming capabilities like they write an external Python program or some other program or Java program and simply call that Python program or a Java program within your standard jobs. You don't have direct connectors from your ETL servers to these big data systems. But Talend was the first people that came up with those direct connectors from your Talend servers to these big data clusters, wherein you can directly have your Talend as a HDFS client and then do those read writes and so on. So that's another major plus point for Talend. And then coming to community edition availability. You see, all these enterprise players, why we're calling them enterprise players is we need to procure the license to use them. We can't use them for educational purposes. You'll not be able to get that for free and so on, even as a trial version. You have to procure the license as a partner or as an organization, then only you'll be able to use it. Now coming to Talend, they started offering both enterprise edition plus community edition. Community edition as a free edition. Only thing is that in enterprise edition, you'll have both server and client capabilities, whereas in community edition, this is for your enterprise. Whereas in your community edition, you will be able to do only client content. That means you will be able to do pretty much everything, that is building your jobs, running your jobs, executing your jobs and all that. But just that you will not have a centralized server to set up a team-based environment. As in, if you'd like to have a versioning capabilities, if you'd like to have checkouts of code, if you'd like to have the accessibility of the code repository, the same version of the code by an entire team, these all aspects will not be possible without a server. But if you are to use the tool for the purpose of doing some POCs, or if you have a very small size development team, like a couple of developers or max 3 to 4 developers, wherein you can still pull off things without having a server, yeah, you can just get things going by using a free edition, right? So this has helped a lot of the people in the industry. First of all, while not moving out of their existing infrastructures, people has parallelly started implementing Talend without procuring the license by using only the client component. So this has opened a lot of doors for Talend by freely offering them their tool to explore. And when the people has found out that okay, this can be something that we can rely upon, then they just went on and procured the license and then eventually started uh, 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 discarding the existing architectures, right? They came up with the migration projects and all that. So yeah, uh, having a community edition in place has made a lot of good to Talend, both an organization as an organization to Talend, and as well as from the user standpoint also. So that's about Talend as a brief introduction, as an organization, as a feature set, what it offers, and how it's better compared to the other standard tools available in the market. Do let me know if you have any questions so far.
So the client version, which version will we be using for practice? Is a client, right?
The latest version available on the site is 7.1.
And does it have like Azure has like 30 days? Does this also have that kind
Yeah.
of?
No, if you have to use 30 days, then you need to download enterprise copy of your client. So the thing is, Talend offers one more good thing is Talend offers the enterprise copy of your client for you to use for 30 days.
Mm-hmm.
Server you can't though. Server you have to purchase, then only you can use.
Mm-hmm.
But enterprise copy of your client you can download as a trial version from your Talend site and use
Mm-hmm.
it. Okay.
And is there a cloud version to also use it, or that enterprise is that cloud version?
No, cloud version is different. So that is a web portal, web application.
Mm-hmm.
So Talent Integration Cloud. This is a web application, also call it as platform as a service tool. So yeah, for this also they offer 30-day trial. But if you are to simply connect to your cloud-based data systems like Azure, AWS, GCS, etc.,
Mm-hmm.
you can do that through the standard clients itself, whether it is community or enterprise.
Okay, so the logic and everything, the inside is the same, or is it different for the TIC versus the enterprise version, like the navigation and everything?
TIC, as I mentioned, this is a web application.
Mm-hmm.
These are Windows applications. So obviously, this is a lightweight tool. Whenever it is a web application, it's a lightweight tool. You can't expect the full enterprise level ETL features in your TIC. This is
Mm-hmm.
majorly meant for your API integrations, app integrations. Okay, wherein you may need to read from an API link or do a publish into an API link and so on. But if
Okay.
you have to build a full scale ETL flows where you are to read and process huge volumes of the data,
Mm-hmm.
then you need to use a standard server client architecture.
Okay. Yeah, that's good to know. But the as far as the navigation, in Material, if it's a client or the TIC, it's pretty much the same. Like once you get in to
The
the.
nomenclature will be same. We call them as jobs. We call them as components. The components
Okay.
will be same, but interface will be different because this is a web application. This is a Windows application.
Okay.
So this Windows application is built on Eclipse. You must have heard of what
Yeah.
Eclipse IDE. So the interface is of Eclipse, but the web portal of your TIC will not be the same. But the nomenclature will be the same. That means the data flows that you build here also called as jobs, and the
Mm-hmm.
same data flows we build here also called as jobs. So
Got it. Got it.
yeah. So yeah, so that's about it. Next up, so let's briefly talk about server and client architecture, how things work here. So talking about server component here is a web application, and we call them as Talent Administration Center, in short for TAC. And your client component, we call them as Talent Studio. Now, the name that you find different, this is your enterprise name, whereas your community edition studio will be Talent Open Studio. Okay, so still studio, just that you'll have a name open added. Now, talking about server, as a typical ETL server architecture, we need to talk about log management. We need to talk about metadata management. We need to talk about integration services.
I have a question about this metadata management. Does it have Talent has its own metadata management tool, or because Colibra and others are there, right? Like,
Uh, See, there are two things to it. Metadata management means whether it is the repository metadata we're talking about, and another metadata management is for your data flow across different tools,
mm-hmm,
right?
okay,
Collabora does this one, wherein you have data flows built across different tools,
mm-hmm,
and a particular metric or a column may be getting transformed from A to B to C to D
mm-hmm,
while it flows throughout the systems. And Collabora can help track that,
okay,
right? So that is different. That is metadata management. So yeah, Talent also has a tool to for it. They call it as Talent Metadata Manager,
okay.
okay, which is a web app again. But
So if
here
you
we're talking, yeah,
no, sorry. So if you have a Colibra, then if you have Talent and Colibra, then it's kind of redundant there, or basically,
no, not redundant.
uh,
If you have Talent Metadata Manager and Collibra, that would be redundant.
one sec, one more time. Talent, Metadata Manager, and Colibra, it's redundant, right?
Yes, Talent Metadata Manager is a separate application.
Mm,
Just like how we talked about these different tools,
mm-hmm.
Talent Metadata Manager is one more tool that adds to this suite.
Okay, okay, got it.
Okay. Right. So coming back to service concepts, when we're talking about log management, we need to talk about project logs. We need to talk environment logs. So project logs we can store in the form of files, in the form of relational database, or you can choose to print in the console also. And we have a name in Talent, we call it as activity monitoring console. Right, AMC. And then coming to environment logs, it stores them only in the form of files. And the instance name is, we typically call it as a log server. Next step, coming to metadata management. That means whatever we build, it has to store somewhere in the backend. Again, it has to be divided into your project metadata and then environment metadata or admin metadata. Into project metadata, what all goes, the jobs that you create, the code that you put in place, the automation goes into admin metadata, sorry, right? Jobs that you create, services that you create, whatever the things are related to project will be your project metadata. Now, since Talent is a Java-based tool, that means whatever we build in the front end, in the back end, it will be converted into Java code. So we'll have to deal with as a typical Java project only. That means even when it comes to storing, you have to use a file-based repository like Git or SVN. So we need a file-based repository, and Talent officially supports either SVN or Git. Next step, coming to your admin metadata, that is information about the data governance like your user profiles, their access privileges, your automation details, your cluster information like what all nodes that are part of your cluster, which node is going up, which node is going down, what is the configuration of each node. So all this is your admin metadata. Your admin metadata needs to be stored in a relational database. right? So project metadata has to be a file-based repository, but your admin metadata has to be a relational-based repository. Next up, coming to your integration engines. That means when you run your job, the servers on which your job runs and the resources of these servers which are used to read, write, and process your data. So these can be one or more based on how you'd like to scale your load. And these can be hosted on cloud environments plus on-premise. On cloud environments, as in you can use the public clouds like AWS, EC2 instances, or Azure VMs, right? GCS VMs and so on. You can have a couple of instances on cloud, you can have a couple of instances on premise also, totally depending upon how you'd like to scale your load and all. Now, there is one last thing we need to talk about, that is, since it is a Java-based project, so it comes into picture. So that is something called artifact repository. What is artifact repository is, you see, earlier we talked about project metadata. This is your raw code, that is editable code. When you open a job through Studio, that is a client component, when you're building a job and you're modifying a job, obviously the backend code will be changing. For that to happen, you need to connect to an editable code, an editable repository. So your studios will be connecting to your SVN or Git, whichever the repository you're hosting the data. But then this is a Java code in the backend. How do you run the Java code? You have to build that. Your Java code is built to be into something called jar files, right? Your executables. Now you need a place where you can store your editable code. You need a place where you can store your executables also. Because whenever you want to run job, you can't afford to rebuild the code every time. That takes a lot of time. So you have to build the code when you do the deployment, store them, and then simply re-executing the executables on your scheduling basis. So where do we store these executables? We need a separate file repository. That's where we will be using artifact repository, and we'll use another file-based repository, and Talent supports the vendor called Nexus. So this is also a file repository, which is for the purpose of storing jars, whereas this is for the purpose of raw code.
Is it storing jars or the Artifactory repository, or is it like packaging the jars?
Packaging, basically. Yes, it does the packaging. So in the package, it's ultimately jars.
Okay, so the Artifactory is also there, right? So that's, we use it in DevOps, like
We can
through.
use that also. Yeah.
Okay, so basically, okay.
Yeah, it basically has to be a file repository.
Mm-hmm.
Either you can choose the default suggested vendor like Nexus, or you can use Artifactory, whichever it is fine.
Okay, I just wanted to understand. Okay,
Yeah,
it's a
yeah.
packaging. Okay, got it.
So whatever we talk about, if you have to look at into a diagrammatical representation, so tag is something that stays in center. I mean, when it comes to accessing the server, this is a single point interface, a GUI interface, wherein this integrates all the nodes of your server. This is a web application, and these two are the metadata instances we talked about. The project metadata, it can be SVN or Git, whereas your admin metadata has to be on a relational instance. And then your project logging can be a database or a file, which we typically call it as AMC, Activity Monitoring Console. An instance that is missing in here is artifact, which we can add it as one more instance. which is a file-based repository in Access. And other than that, we have these execution engines. For representational purpose, we have a couple of them here, but we can have one to many based on the need. And these are client interfaces. Studios, you can have one to many users based on the maximum users that are allowed on your license. So yeah, so that's briefly about architecture, how things work, how it breaks down. Now, you can have all these instances installed on one physical node, or best practice is you have a separate physical node for each service to run to avoid any single point failures. Okay, so yeah, do let me know if you have any questions. All right then, so that's about briefly architecture. We'll stop it here and then we connect next time, and then we'll start with the development topics. We'll start exploring Studio, how to build things and all that stuff.
Okay.
Okay.
So what is your, so you said 5 days, right? So Monday to Friday?
Monday to Friday. Yeah.
Okay.
So I
Because
would give you two choices, whether
no,
you
because
would like to connect.
my Monday is your,
Yeah.
my Friday is your Saturday, right?
Yeah, that's what I was coming. Either you would like to follow your Monday to Friday schedule or my Monday to Friday schedule. Either way is fine with me. If you can just confirm, we can stick to that. If you have to follow my Monday to Friday schedule.
Anyone is fine for me, Raj.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Venkat. How about you, Satish?
I am fine with the my Monday to Friday, but there I have certain days I have, especially on Tuesdays, I have a conflict every other Tuesday. Okay, because
Okay,
I
every
have
other Tuesday, right? Not like
no, no.
no.
So
Then it's fine. Every once in a couple of weeks, that's fine.
yeah, because I
Okay,
have meetings that run till 11 o'clock. So
understand.
okay,
All right
so
then. So yeah,
you want? Is there anything that you guys can give to for us to download and what?
yeah. I'll
Place?
be giving all the details. How do we set up things and all
Okay.
that. Okay.
So then we are meeting again on my Monday.
Your Monday, yes.
Okay.
Okay. All right, sir. Yeah. Thank you.
And Raj, I would like to know when we connect. Uh,
I'll talk to you, Venkat. Yeah.
sure, sure.
Thank you.
So Venkat, are you here local or I mean, or in
Yeah,
India?
I'm in USA, Illinois.
Okay. All right.
Where you are from?
Was that?
Where you are now?
I'm North Carolina.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
All right,
Okay.
guys. Thank you.
Thank you,
Have a
Raj.
nice.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Bye bye.